Second day of PitchCon now. Let me bring in Steve Gardner, Brent Hershey, and Rob Manfred's son. Rob Manfred, I mean, the son is here. I understand, but I was really hoping to get the commissioner instead. Why are you here?
Well, I was told by my father to be on your show.
Well, all right. That's a good way to start this. I'm going to get out of here now because I'm terrified. But this is the best hitting value at every position. Thank you all so much for being here.
All right. On that note, it's going to be that kind of panel, folks. Welcome. I'm Steve Gardner from USA Today. You see Brent Hershey of Baseball HQ beside me, and that is Gray Albright of Razzball. If you don't know his alter ego, and we're happy to come to you today and talk about value. We're all about value. We love value. And so I guess one of the things first to start things off before we kind of set the ground rules a little bit. What is value? What are we talking about? I mean, you've been in drafts. I think all of us have, where somebody makes a pick and say, hey, nice value you got there. But what are they actually talking about? And what is actually actionable for us when we're putting together our draft lists and our draft strategy? I think everybody kind of has in their own mind what value is, but I think for purposes here, and maybe we'll diverge a little bit, but just to give us some guardrails, what I'd like to say is a couple different things in terms of value. Players, obviously you want players that earn higher than their ADP, but that can be any number of different things. It's hard to get more value early. It's easier to get a lot value late. So we're going to kind of hit a couple of different types of value today as we go around the positions. We want, number one, value among top tier players who can give you like a solid statistical base. And then number two, value late in drafts where the breakout players that you pick could turn out to be league winners. So with those things in mind, let's go to the panel and we'll talk to Brent and Gray and get their thoughts. I thought we'd start today, guys, with outfield, because a lot of times in these, when you go by positions, you start with catcher and it's not really fun. You end up talking too much about catchers and not enough about the later positions. So let's start with the outfield and kind of give us what you think about the position and the guys that you're looking at as the top value. So Brent, go ahead, kick us off.
Sure. And some of mine throughout the presentation here aren't necessarily, from that first group, aren't necessarily top tier guys, but guys maybe a little bit more in the middle. Now there's a few top tier guys, but I'm looking at my list here. First one to start off in the outfield with Riley Green. He's got an ADP right around 200, and I think the reasons that I think about why he can kind of return a higher value from that is a couple things. I mean, he's super young, obviously 22, was kind of on schedule to start the year with Detroit last year, had a foot injury that held him back for a while. Was definitely kind of a power speed combination guy in the minors. A quick riser, high draft pick from several years ago. And even though, his stats last year, once he came back, were kind of underwhelming, our kind of Baseball HQ expected stats bear out this power speed combination. He had kind of 13 expected home runs, 12 expected stolen bases, which is obviously quite a bit different than the 5 and the 1 that he put through on his actual stats. I mean, you go over to his StatCast page, then his hard hit and max EV, is more than what you'd expect for, again, what his statistical output was last year. And then, and certainly, you have to figure in the park. It's in Detroit, not favorable, maybe slightly more now. And I think, all of us with as we're thinking about any of the Tigers, we'll take anything we can get there. And I think you need to also keep in mind Green's strikeout rate, I think is a bit concerning. But I just think it's the profile is super young. athletic again. The way he kind of hit his way through the minors, and that power speed combination, which obviously we're all us fantasy folks are after, are an important thing, I think, to wait on and not give up on Riley Green.
What do you think about the dimensions at Comerica Park? Do you think that obviously it can't hurt him, but in general, what do we think about them bringing the fences in a little bit and Tigers hitters?
Yeah, I mean, I think it ups them a little bit, and like I said, I think any pluses that you can gain in that way for us as fantasy players is a positive there, and I think Green could be, one of the beneficiaries of that move.
All right, Gray, the floor is yours.
Your mic's clicking or something, Brent.
It is.
Yeah, it's clicking. Unlike Riley Green, sorry. I
At
think
least last year.
Yeah, I mean the 5 homers and 1 steal has me giving a little bit of pause on Riley Green, but yeah, I mean the prospecting community was really all about him, when he was coming up. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he broke out. His price, I think, is pretty decent. I had 2 guys. So like you were saying earlier, Steve, about like what is hitter value, which is really actually kind of interesting because like, I go over this a lot on Razzball and I talk a lot about it, but it really does matter kind of what size league. Like a guy who's going to be in a 12-team AL only league is going to be a lot different value than someone who's in a 10-team mixed league. So it really does come down to like size of league and, maybe even like what your league mates are thinking. Like a guy who could potentially fall in one league may not fall in another. So anyway, with that said, I had a couple guys. One guy who I had who is a little bit higher value than I think a lot of people probably won't consider him a quote unquote sleeper. Like that may not be the case, but with Tyler O'Neill from the Cardinals, just as early as last year, people assumed he was going to be a top 20 pick for a long time. Like it was basically his coronation last year when he came up and he hit 34 homers and stole 15 bags and hit 286. And then, obviously last year was a disappointment, but he was injured. Like I think he had basically an injury to every part of his body. He had like 7 injuries, of course, like over the course of 6 months of the season. So I would say just throw out Tyler O'Neill completely from last year's numbers. Just totally forget them. And at his value right now, I think he's going like roughly around like 80 to 90 overall, at least on NFBC. I don't know other people's ADP, but I'm sure he's not going as high as he was last year. But he could easily return that value and come back and do as well as we thought he was going to do. I would just totally throw out last year with Tyler O'Neill and draft him with confidence wherever you can get him, even if that is, roughly 7th round overall in a 12-team league.
I think that's going to be a familiar theme too as we go through these guys, is that you've got players who, last year did not do what they were thought, what were expected from them. And because of whatever, injuries, playing time, slumps, things like that, that's where a lot of, if you're just talking in general, value tends to show up where guys, because, growth is not linear. Player production is not linear, and it doesn't always go straight up and it doesn't always go down. A guy that I have on my list is that same sort of guy, and it's George Springer. ADP of 83 right now on NFBC, and that's probably discount because of his injury history. He was hurt last year. I think, though, his situation looks good in Toronto this year because the injuries have come from, playing the outfield, playing center field in particular. And with Kevin Kiermaier coming into Toronto, Springer gets to move to right field, maybe lessens the chance of injury. And you look at him, he started off so incredibly hot last year. that it gave you a lot of hope that that he could produce in all 5 categories. He did so, but then obviously tailed off. 14 steals for him last year, second most of his career. So he may be one of those guys as we're looking toward the new rules next year about what what guys may be running more. I think that middle ground of players who maybe don't run as often but are pretty successful, those guys will get a boost. I think Springer is one of those
Also,
guys.
yeah. Also, not to interrupt, but I think also the Blue Jays are moving their fences and they're doing like a reverse Baltimore Orioles. So I mean,
Hmm.
could help his power too.
Absolutely. So figure, Brent, we'll throw this to kind of break a tie. If Springer's at 83 and Tyler O'Neill's at 79, both of them are there, and you're
Yeah.
picking at 85. You have a preference?
I think I'd probably go Springer there. Just the longer track record. I like how his career's kind of evolved. Both have obviously some injury risk. Although O'Neill's is more recent. But it's a fairly close match. I mean, obviously O'Neill's skills are explosive, and he's a good bit younger too. But I think I'd probably go Springer.
Can I vote for Tyler O'Neill?
Yes, you may.
You
Yes,
did
may.
already.
We'll stir up a lot of dissension among the ranks.
Hey, I also I was mentioning how like value for different leagues. I also want to throw out a couple names for later on for the outfield because
Yeah,
like
let's
you
do
said,
that.
because like you said, catcher's not really going to matter. So there's one guy like Jose Siri. I don't know if people have seen the projections for him, but the projections love him. I mean, they're honestly, if he does anywhere close to the projections, he's going to way outvalue his draft pick spot right now, which I believe is around 330 overall on NFBC. So if he's able to come close to what he's projecting at is around 2020 240 from Steamer. If he comes anywhere close to that, it's going to be like complete, like a huge value boost. So I want to say to people just like last round in some leagues or late in other leagues, if you can grab Jose Siri, it's really worth the gamble.
Steamer likes him for 20 homers.
Well, Steamer doesn't project for Rasball. Steamer projections have him for 2020 thereabouts, but Steamer, as you know, they don't project for at bats, so it depends. They're just giving rates, so it depends on how many at bats he gets. And with Kevin Cash, it's not necessarily clear whether or not he's going to be an everyday guy, but it looks like he will be. And if he is, and for the price that he is at drafts, I really find the downside is very minimal for Jose Siri.
And
Yeah.
his defense should keep him in the lineup if he gets in there too.
Yeah, and I was surprised definitely after they traded for him end of last year too, how much they played him pretty consistently. New year coming up now and all that, but certainly skills are there to make that difference if he gets the playing time, I think.
Also, if Tyler O'Neill is there around 300 overall, I like him.
You take that too? Oh.
Very good.
Yeah.
I'll throw another late guy, a guy that we really liked a couple years ago. Jesse Winker is at 270 on ADP. He's still just 29, moving to Milwaukee, likely to be the everyday DH there. And remember, last year was a complete bust in Seattle, obviously, but he was a 305, 394, 556 hitter in 2021. So there's still some talent there in my mind, and at that price, I'm in for that.
Yeah, certainly the park effect for that one is positive too. Going to Milwaukee, I think that's a really good one too, because that's certainly before last year and before the trade, especially when he was in Cincinnati. It's someone a lot of us were had high on our list, or as a stable kind of player that had some potential for plus batting average and plus power there. I would second that Winker.
All right. Any other outfielders we want to talk about?
I know I didn't give you this guy beforehand, but I also want to throw out there in the same similar vein as Jose Siri, Edward Alvarez, the Royals outfielder.
Love him.
Yeah.
Yep, I like him too.
Late gamble. Yeah.
All right, let's move along to third base. And we'll start with Gray this time. Who do you like as maybe a higher level, if any, third baseman this year?
No one. Can I say? Can I say no one? Because I really, honestly, so obviously we knew what we were going to be talking about prior to this thing. It only sounds like we're unprepared, okay? But honestly, like, I was looking through the third baseman for like early values and trying to figure out like who I like. Like, I like guys like Devers, obviously, Austin Riley for sure, Gunnar Henderson. Like, I like players early, but value wise, I don't think you're getting value early. Like, and by early, I mean like pre 100 overall, like a guy who's like going in like the 7th or 8th and gonna give you like possibly top 25, top 30 value. I just don't see it. I mean, honestly, I don't see any value. Alex Bregman's fine, but I don't know. I just didn't see it for a value for a third baseman. For later on, I had some guys like Jose Miranda. I like a lot. I wrote a sleeper post about him. I think he's in a great position in order to have like, a uptick in value. He's probably not going to steal more than 3 bags, but he's got a really good eye, good hit tool. He's probably in the, I want to say 280 overall, like for a batting average, and roughly 25 homers, maybe the ceiling, but it's there. I mean, it's a possibility for him. So, I mean, honestly, third base is a bad position, man. It's not good. No, it's really not. Like, and I was like really searching for a good third baseman. Like, I have guys who have third base eligibility for other positions that we'll get to. So you'll be able to fill third base, but it's not going to be easy.
Well, you look at the NFBC ADPs right now. 6 third basemen are going in the top 40 overall, and it's pretty clear to where that tier cuts off, and then there's a pretty big drop till you get down to Bregman and Gunnar Henderson. So, yeah, trying to find value, it's not easy. I'll say that when I was putting my list together, I said Bregman for the upper guys, but still, just maybe because of the bounce back, his ADP is bumped down a little bit. He still had 93 runs and 93 RBIs last year, but didn't hit as well because his BABIP was down at 260. So that's kind of the where I'm at with those upper guys. But yeah, if you don't get an elite third baseman, you can wait for a good long time.
Yeah. The guy that came to mind for me is down a little bit further, kind of in that next tier, and that's Max Muncy. The second base, third base eligibility is nice, but again, given the crappiness of the third base position this year, if you have Muncy, you'll probably play him at third. There's obviously some batting average risk there. And this time last year, we were really not sure about his health, and quite frankly, the beginning of the year last year,
right, the elbow
was terrible. The elbow, he went back on the DL. I mean, I pretty much had wrote him off at that point. Excuse me. But then the second half, he came back and the power really surged to just about the levels where he's had been before that. So I think where he's gone now, 150-ish range, there could be some limited upside there again, because the batting average is not going to help you. But I think the home runs, being in, still a really good Dodger lineup, and pretty much probably playing every day, is makes Max Muncy someone to consider there.
All right. I've got one way deep. If you guys have any others you want to throw out before I go fishing into the in the deep end.
I had one guy who like I said, I didn't I didn't copy you on his name because I was holding him back for our Tout Wars NL only league. You know,
That's right.
I didn't
We
want
don't want
to
to give away all of our secrets just yet.
That's right. Got two competitors here, I guess.
Yes.
We're all going to say
why,
AL guys.
Yeah. So that's why I'm telling you not to draft any third baseman in the front. I'm purposely throwing you off the scent. I don't draft Jose Ramirez, okay, Steve. I had one guy way late. I think he's going probably like 400 overall. I mean, he's super late. So again, it's like NL only, very deep league. I like Spencer Steer. I think with the DFAing or the releasing of Mike Moustakas, the Reds look like they're finally going to turn the page there and move to Steer as their guy at the corner. I wouldn't like, there's a reason why he's going 400th overall. I mean, there's definitely some issues, but if in Cincy, which is a great park, it even made Jesse Winker look good. Speaking of Jesse Winker, so Spencer Steer could get into like 25 homers, and he had a good hit tool in the minors. He didn't necessarily translate that to the majors last year. He had a lot of weak contact. He had a low BABIP, but the BABIP was kind of a contingent on the weak contact. So yeah, it's not. I mean, he's not great. I'm not, or he could be a decent gamble, but it's very late, and you may as well, if you're like, looking at a NL only corner man, like for $1 or something.
I think he has the, for now anyway, has that third base job, or is the leader in the clubhouse heading into spring training there, playing time wise. And if you're in deep leagues, that's just important. A lot of times as the players.
I will say too, at this time last year for shortstop, I was on this panel last year and I said Jeremy Pena was a good shortstop late. So, track record.
Oh, there you go.
Very good. Got to remind him. I'll tell you what, I will see your Steer, and I will not raise you, but lower you a notch with Jamer Candelario. How about that? I mean, going to the Nationals from Detroit, change in park is much better. And this is a guy, you forget, led the league with 61 extra base hits in 2021. So, I mean, he's got that extra base kind of pop, and maybe the fences in Nationals Park are a little bit more within his reach than they were in Comerica. So, and again, like Steer, looks like he's pretty much got the job all to himself. So if you're going that deep, then might as well consider Jamer Candelario at that position.
Yeah, he's one I've looked at too, and kind of think the same thing. Like you said, he was tied for the league lead in over the majors in doubles, I think, in that year too. So it's not like it's a singles.
That's what it was. Yeah,
a singles hitter, and his skills, even though last year was really bad, a lot of his skills kind of held up. It just was, who knows what else was going on there in Detroit.
Everybody was bad.
Yeah, but to kind of get out of there, fresh start. Sometimes that's a good place to look for fresh start guys like that.
Absolutely. And of course, this is time of year where you're doing a lot of draft champions, those 50-round draft and hold drafts. I'm doing one right now, and competing against Brent and Ray and a bunch of other guys. So yeah, we're looking for those guys. We're at this point in our draft, trying to find those guys ourselves.
Yeah.
Let's move on to shortstop. And Brent, you want to tackle us first here?
Sure. Yeah, I like kind of where Wander Franco is going right now, around pick 90 or so. I think the 2021 injury, kind of is sort of a perfect sort of buying opportunity for this year anyway. I mean, I think it's a little bit confusing or put back because his profile is so non-traditional that we look for kind of in these top picks. He's doesn't come in as a huge homer guy. He's not a speedster. We're trying to get 25 or 30 steals out of there, but it's this elite kind of contact and hit tool, which he showed throughout the minors and kind of really, scouts have talked about and kind of really drives his value. I mean, he just has an elite contact rate. He's just 22. And I think the fact that, that it's possible that he puts up a 300 batting average like that this season at a time when batting averages in general are going down. Anyone that plays knows that kind of the threshold to get a positive batting average has fallen recently. I just think it gives him, with all that contact and knowing he's going to play every day in Tampa, I think it gives him a chance to kind of really beat that sort of 90-ish ADP. And I think we'll be drafting him a lot higher this time next year.
You mentioned that non-traditional kind of stats profile. Does it remind you of anybody else, that has been a valuable fantasy guy? I kind of think, maybe a Jeff McNeil or somebody who was really valuable last year and helped a lot of fantasy teams win, if not titles, but do very well.
Sure. I mean, that's one profile that's similar to Wander, I think. Having the shortstop eligibility, and I think there's a ceiling there because he's doing this at in his early 20s. So there's always kind of a growth potential, and any one of these seasons, someone that young with that kind of experience can kind of really take a next step up. But yeah, I think McNeil's a fair comparison there.
All right, Gray, what do you have?
Okay, so again, with the caveats of I'm not saying this guy's a sleeper necessarily. I think people have heard of him, but I'm going to say O'Neal Cruz. So he's going at 75 overall. He feels like a guy who's going to be a top 20 pick as soon as next year for a long time. He rips the ball in a way that I don't think we've seen maybe ever. It's just going to be, I don't know what his ceiling is, but I don't think we've come anywhere close to seeing it. He could be, I think he could be
a lottery ticket.
He could be, a lottery ticket for sure. But a lottery ticket where if you're, if you get 3 of the 6 numbers, you're getting $20. you're winning money. You're still going to get money because this is a guy who I really don't think the floor is that low. There's a lot of people worried about the average. So here's a little quick aside that I'm sure you guys know about, but maybe people listening don't. So he went outside the organization and said he was going to go get his own hitting coach. He went and got a guy, and in September, he hit 288 for the month. Now, this is a guy who's literally had barely a half a season in the major leagues. Even Mike Trout wasn't good his first season in the major leagues. We have to give him a little bit of leeway that he wasn't great in those first couple months for average. But I don't even think we see O'Neal Cruz. I don't think we're necessarily going to be a negative on average. I think the major league average last year was 250, 248, something terrible. I think O'Neal Cruz can be better than average on average. And that's just the one category where I think people are a little bit worried about him. Everything else is going to be beautiful. It's going to be he's going to hit 30 homers. He's going to steal 15 to 20 bags. The lineup isn't great, so the runs and RBIs could be a little bit less than ideal, but they're going to be good enough. I mean, it's hard to account for runs and RBIs. So he could actually, I think he could this year be a top 25 overall guy on the Razzball Player Rater at the end of the year, and next year definitely going to be a top 20 guy. I honestly, I feel like the sky is the limit for O'Neal Cruz, that we're not sure how good he can be. So at 75 overall in drafts, I'm all in.
I'll throw this out for both of your guys. I think some of the criticism has been that they don't lift the ball and don't hit the ball in the air. And so that, O'Neal Cruz can have exit velocities at 112 miles per hour, but if he's not getting it in the air, he's not going to hit a ton of home runs. Do you guys think that players like Wander Franco and O'Neal Cruz Is that a problem for them, or are they just young enough that they can grow into the kind of hitter that they need to be to do damage?
I think the latter. I mean, I usually think that hitters can grow into that, and we've seen that over time. Where it's of course it's case by case, depending what kind of coaching they're getting and how willing they are to make those adjustments. But we've certainly seen that where guys come in early, hit the ball on the ground a ton, and as they mature, are able to hit more liners and more fly balls. So I think that is the case that, or one of the possible outcomes there. I mean, I do. Cruz is such an interesting guy to talk about, because oftentimes when we see guys come in with that kind of power, that kind of exit velocity, that kind of swing and miss, I mean, it's kind of a power or nothing sort of
Right.
outcome. And he has, obviously he's crazy gifted and has the legs and the to get a bunch of steals. I mean, I think 15 could be low for him once he gets to his peak. So I think it makes it a just a really different case because he brings that element to the rest of what we normally see as a traditional slugging, high exit velocity type of prospect, really.
Yeah, and you touched on the big difference between those two is Franco, very plate disciplined, will take lots of walks. O'Neal Cruz will swing at pretty much anything, high strikeout rate. So depending on your tolerance for risk or whatever, you can pick between the two of them.
I think also, like there's something with O'Neal Cruz where, I mean, his launch angle last year was a little bit over 8. So, I mean, he's definitely not one to, have a very uppercut ish swing where he's not swinging for the fences. The ball just goes to the fences. So, I mean, that I know, like, people have been burned in the past by like a Christian Yelich where, everything is into the ground. That's not O'Neal Cruz necessarily. Like, Vlad Guerrero Jr. last year, I want to say his launch angle was around 4, and he's going in the top 10 overall. Now, Vlad versus O'Neal Cruz, sure, Vlad's got better contact. He's going to hit for a better average in general, more than likely, but he did hit 274 last year. And like I said, O'Neal Cruz hit 288 in the month of September. So what's up?
Indeed. I wish I had as an exciting pair of guys on my list, but I went pretty boring. I picked Xander Bogaerts as my guy at ADP of 86. He's coming off after Tommy Edman, after O'Neal Cruz, after Dansby Swanson. I get it. He's not in Fenway anymore, but the lineups that I've seen, projected lineups, have him hitting cleanup behind Juan Soto and Manny Machado. I think things are in great shape for him, and why he's getting drafted so much later is kind of a mystery to me. So I think in that range, I'm going to be more likely to get more Xander Bogaerts shares than any of those other guys.
Boring.
I know. I prefaced it. How about for late values? I'll throw maybe not as exciting, but another young guy, Bryson Stott, I think is somebody that could take that next step again, like we were talking about with O'Neal Cruz, with Wander Franco. Maybe not to their level yet, but he did over the second half of the season when he finally got regular playing time, hit 276, 331, 404 over the second half, and races hard contact. And I think that just comes with experience, being familiar. He's not going to wow you, but double digits in home runs and stolen bases after pick 200. That's good for me. You guys, what else? What others?
Yeah, I'll make a quick comment on Stott. I mean, he also, just the quality of his at bats. I mean, you saw some of it when if you watched some of the playoff games, but that happened kind of throughout the season too, a good bit. I got to see a bunch of Phillies games and controlling at bats, long at bats, fouling off stuff he couldn't get to. Yes, more swing and miss than what you'd like. But really, there were times when he worked a pitcher and got a pitch he could handle and came through. And for a rookie like that in those situations, I just put my stamp of approval on the pick for Stott there. I had a former Phil, and this is again, as Gray was talking about, it's all league dependent, right? But for deeper leagues, sometimes your last pick or your last couple, you just want someone that plays a lot. And so I just considered JP Crawford here. I mean, in one sense, I think there's a chance he could be, kind of this year's Elvis Andrus, obviously much younger, but the type of guy, that we sort of think we know who he is. And, like Andrus.
We have, I'm sorry, Brent, we have breaking news. The Orioles have just acquired Cole Irvin. What?
Uh-oh. Breaking news on our program.
Yeah.
How about that?
No, sorry, go ahead.
That's fine.
Thrive in Camden Yards, Cole Irvin.
Yes.
Go get him.
You're right. Anyway, so I just, I think Crawford's one that kind of young enough, kind of, you sort of think you know who he is, going to play a lot, and, might be someone more productive than taking a long shot kind of there at your last pick.
All right. Gray, you got any more? Or any more breaking news to pass along?
Breaking news.
We need to replace that on the ticker there.
Yeah, I mean, I had, shortstop is actually a very deep position. I mean, you can go pretty deep and find a bunch of guys. Like, it's crazy. I'm just going to name a few guys because it's really crazy. Like, depending on the value or not value, excuse me, the category. Because when you get later, a lot of times you're looking for categories versus players. So you're like, looking for steals maybe or something. So anyway, Ezekiel Tofar, Colorado shortstop, going very late, got good speed. There's Oswald Peraza, who actually I'm kind of surprised is going as late as 350 overall because he's on the Yankees, and usually that gets a little bit of a boost just on hype alone. But, maybe people aren't really sure if he's going to play over
all that love for
Isaiah.
IKF.
Yeah, IKF may steal his bats. Bryce Terang, Brewers going at like 500 overall. Again, I don't know if he's going to be an everyday playing time guy, but he's definitely got, there's some value there because he was really solid hit tool in the minors. And then there's also like guys who are kind of not washed up, guys who are kind of like, who have seen like some of their shine taken off of them, like Royce Lewis, who not that long ago, he was like, everyone loved Royce Lewis. And then, he's obviously had a lot of issues with injuries, but, he could actually make good on his prospect status from like 2 years ago. So there's that, but there's so many. I mean, there's honestly, shortstop is so deep. We could spend an hour talking about shortstops. There's a lot of guys.
All right. Well, we'll move along and maybe come back if we need to. At second base, I'm where Gray was at third base. I don't really see a whole lot of value up in the high draft picks. I settled on Gleyber Torres at ADP 120. He's run a lot more the past 2 seasons than he ever has in the past. Was 14 out of 20 in stolen bases 2 years ago, 10 out of 15 last year. Maybe again, the Yankees decide that Gleyber can run, and with the stolen base possibility of increasing that, maybe he gets closer to 20 this year, and that would make him very valuable. Second base, I think that there's kind of a top 2, and then there's a gap, and then there's a whole bunch more. And Torres is in that second big tier, and I kind of like him at ADP 120. How about you, Brent?
Yeah, I went down further again for mine, and picked settled on Brendan Rodgers from the Rockies. I mean, I think the natural thing with the Rockies these days is the guy to go to the home road splits. But I do think that there tends to be more noise in those than what we realize sometimes. I mean, you look at his Rogers, for instance, specifically his home away splits the last year, and it'll support that narrative, right? I mean, he was great at home, but awful on the road. But you go back a year, 2021, it was flipped. He actually hit better on the road than he did at home, and for his career, the gap isn't quite as big as what you may expect. I mean, he's just 26 years old. He's got several years of experience already. He's improved his overall contact rate. Some of the StatCast stuff is improving too. Barrel percentage, average exit velocity, hard hit rates. Still kind of crazy to me that he won't run. Like after a season or two of double-digit steals in the minors, he's never attempted a stolen base in the majors, which is crazy.
I saw that on Twitter this week, and I was like, "What? Really?
Yeah,
zero?
It's crazy." But I think there's opportunity again for kind of a step up there for Rodgers playing second base for the Rockies. Again, going around pick 265 right now depends. Again, sort of depends on how deep your league is.
All right, Gray, what you got for second base?
Okay, so not to I'm not gonna say what you guys said already, but it's not a great position. So anyway, with that said, I have the guy who I was saying has third base eligibility in some leagues. I think I don't know how many games he played, but I think he has third base eligibility in Yahoo. Anyway, his name is Tommy Edman, who I'm not. So he's got second base eligibility, so that's why I'm mentioning him here. He definitely has second base. So
right,
I'm not
second and short, I think.
Right, second and short in the majority of leagues, but I think he also played third in like enough to get Yahoo eligibility. Anyway,
probably has catcher eligibility in Yahoo though, doesn't he?
Yeah, totally.
Cheap shot.
Anthony Rizzo is still able to play second there. Anyway, so Tommy Edman, I actually don't really like Tommy Edman. No, I do like him. So here's what I'll say this. So I think for second base, it's not a great position. And if you're looking for a guy who's above like 100, who could return value, Tommy Edman is that guy. He can return value. He's going at like 75 overall. I want to say he was top 50 overall on the player rater last year, on the Razzball player rater last year. So there's some value there. I also feel like there's a chance that the Cardinals could move on to like a Gorman, and they have a lot of guys who could take playing time and take at bats away from Edman. And at the end of last year, Edman even had moved down to like 9th in the order. So it's not good. It's not necessarily perfect. And I don't think you're going to find a perfect guy at second base unless you're paying for like, Altuve or I don't know, Simeon.
Marcus Simeon. Yeah. That's
I mean, even like Jazz Chisholm and Ozzie Albies, I mean, they missed most of last year. And those are like top guys in this position. So it's not a great position at the top. So I'll throw Tommy Edman out there, but keep, caveats in mind.
I think Edman has, playing time locked in. I don't know who else could play second base or who else could play shortstop. I think he's going to be everyday shortstop there in St. Louis.
And, I think so too. I just feel like they do have a lot of guys. I agree with you that he is probably the locked in second baseman. And that's why I'm saying that like he's a decent value bet, but they have a bunch of guys who have like infield eligibility and they can mix and match. And I'm just saying, I just want to throw out a few warnings.
Great for your sim league drafts. If you
I just want to make sure I'm hedging everywhere I go.
I'll throw one other guy out real quick. Ketel Marte at 208. I mean, you're not going to see 329, 32 homers, 10 steals again like you did a couple years ago, but he's still only 29. And I like the Diamondbacks. I think they're going to possibly make a jump this season. He's probably going to hit second in that lineup. So keep an eye out. I can't quit Ketel Marte like a couple of us in the industry. So any other second baseman guys?
I have quit him.
Have you? Okay.
I am
Well,
totally quit him. You know what I worry about with Kettle Marte? Who you may be able to convince me otherwise, but like I feel like ever since the ball was deadened, like he
Yeah.
can't. He's not a home run hitter anymore. He's just like he's a good like 355-foot fly ball out hitter, which is my concern.
yeah, I've a valid concern, and that's why he's going at 208. So I'll
Fair
take
enough.
him. I guess I'll take him in Tout Wars for a couple bucks. Work it that way. All right, let's leave second base. The less said about that, the better. First base, top tiers. Anybody, Brent, that strikes your fancy?
I'm kind of intrigued with Josh Bell a little bit. Again, not a top tier guy, going around 185, but like the 18th first baseman off the board. His first half, second half splits were pretty stark. But in that first half, before he got traded, it was pretty positive. Our baseball HQ expected batting average during that time was 289. He had a 900 OPS, a ground ball rate under 50%, which has always been, part of the problem. Again, one of these big guys that still hits the ball on the ground too much. And he really had the best contact rate in his career. He's still 30, takes some walks, gets on base. His K rate is improving. I don't think he's going to get back to the 30 plus home runs of the kind of bouncy ball 2019, the season he had there. But I think it could be more well-rounded, with a really plus batting average and, a tweak or two away from, 25-ish, maybe home runs, something like that. So I'm Bell's someone that just has my interest.
And he was very popular in Washington for the brief time that he stayed. So I would love to see him do well. Yeah. Gray, what do you got for first?
First is a guy who I'm actually kind of surprised that his value hasn't really taken an uptick since he signed with the Astros, and that's Jose Abreu. I mean, he feels like as basic as like I mean, there's really nothing to expand on with him. Like everyone knows who Jose Abreu is,
right.
So maybe that's why his value really hasn't gone up at all, because people are like, okay, whatever, 20 something homers, 270 average. But I don't know. I feel like people are selling him short in the middle of the Astros lineup. He's going to be a lock for a lock for 100 RBIs. He's going to have good runs. He's going to hit 20. The Crawford boxes could even bump up his power back to where it was pre-2022 when he hit 15. Maybe he can get to like 27 plus homers. He's actually really surprisingly great for average as well. I mean, he's got good contact, had like a 16% strikeout rate last year. He hit 304 last year. If he can hit 280 in the Astros lineup, it's going to be hard to not see value there. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of a boring pick, and I can see why people are maybe like, holding their nose a little bit when they're making it during a draft, but it's good value.
Absolutely. That's what we're here to talk about, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking about that value. I like that pocket there among the first basemen with Abreu, Rhys Hoskins, Christian Walker, Andrew Vaughn, and the guy that I had, CJ Cron, who's 121 ADP. His first two seasons in Colorado, injury-free, averaging close to 30 home runs and 100 RBIs per season. And taking those injuries out of the equation, I think kind of rids him of that label, and I like what he does. So kind of fits in all with that tier of guys where I think you can find value if somebody else likes, Cron or Hoskins or Abreu and leaves Christian Walker for you or Vaughn or whatever. I think that's a good place to find it.
Yeah, it's a good place. It is a good place in the draft to kind of, earmark that you're going to get a first baseman in this range, and kind of, play the room depending what falls. There's, there's usually a good choice there for you when you come to pick.
Going deeper, anybody? I'm going to get back to a Brandon Belt and try one more time in
Yeah.
Toronto. I know you hate him. Everybody hates him. But the fences are moved in. We talked about that. He's likely only going to DH against right-handed pitchers. He says he's feeling great, in
Yeah.
the best shape of his life, probably. So I'm gonna take that ride. I'm gonna pay that nickel, and I'm only gonna pay an ADP in the late 400s.
Yeah. And I mean, and keeping him off the field, if he is going to DH most of the time, maybe that does help a little bit.
I bumped him up to 356 in the
don't
DC that I'm in right now.
Gray's not convinced. What do you guys think? I mean, I had for a late guy. What do you think about Dominic Smith in Washington? To me, he just seems like the prototypical kind of change of scenery guy. Still young enough. Maybe that he's out of New York and out of the Alonso shadow there. I just look back when he did play regularly in that shortened 2020 season, 316, 10 homers, 42 ribbies, and 200 plate appearances. I'm a little bit intrigued there by Smith in Washington.
Well, I got a full time. Yeah.
I have a confession to make. Last year, I heard a best shape of his life Dom Smith story, and I bet money in Vegas for him to hit the most homers in the major leagues last year.
Oh, there you go.
And he had a goose egg.
Well, if you're not going to hit it, you might as well miss big too. So.
Yeah, he came up a little short of Aaron Judge.
Just a bit.
A little bit. I actually like the Dom Smith late pick because, like you said, I mean, he's got playing time. He's going to he'll get the at bats. I mean, they really have they've punted until I think like 2028. So Dom Smith will get 500 at bats if he stays healthy and they don't trade him for something random in like July. But yeah,
I don't think Joey Meneses is going to play first base all the time and keep Dom on the bench.
I honestly, he's a guy, if we were going to reverse this entire show and do guys who we think are overdrafted, I don't want any part of Joey Menendez or whatever his name is. I mean, I think he's totally, honestly, if you were to look at like, taking like Luke Voigt, who I don't even think has a home yet. Like if you were to take like Luke Voigt from 2020 and learn the lesson of don't draft Joey Menendez just because he had a good 60 games. I mean, please, he is like really, I think he's like 31 and he just was a rookie. Yeah. I don't trust that at all. Fair
enough. All right. Well, we have just a few minutes to go through catcher now. So just as we planned, what do we like? Where do we see value in the catching position? Gray, go ahead. Start us off.
So I had Tyler Stevenson, who I think is just like, there's not much to say. I just think that like if people remember, like go back into the little the recesses of your mind and remember what you were thinking about Tyler Stevenson going into last year and just transfer that to this year because he was just injured last year. So just assume last year didn't happen because he's still a great hitter. He's going to hit like 280. He's in a great park. Who cares if the lineup stinks? It doesn't matter. He'll be fine. He's going to hit 280 with 15 to 17 homers. Doesn't sound great, but at catcher, it's more than valuable.
Yeah, and plus he can DH. He can play a little first base and get in the lineup that way. I'm with you. If I didn't put down Wilson Contreras and tell you guys, I would have had Tyler Stevenson on my list as well. What do you say, Brent?
I have MJ Melendez, who's around pick 98, but the 8th catcher overall, and a rookie, kind of smaller sample, of course, but really just the hard hit metrics is what has me intrigued. His average exit velocity, barrel rate, hard hit rate, all that stuff has been great. He's obviously hit last year anyway, near the top of that lineup. Now, I mean, things could change there with a new manager and all. There's some swing and miss, but in there. But as Babbitt indicates, he's not really a Mendoza line batting average guy. He should be higher than that. And he runs well for a catcher. Again,
enough to put him in the outfield.
Yeah, enough to put him in the outfield. And I think, as I've been going through early draft season anyway, I'm really interested, obviously, in how these new stolen base rules or the new rules will affect stolen bases. And someone like this who, has a couple and whose speed, sprint speed and stuff isn't terrible, are guys I'm kind of interested in because I really don't know exactly what's going to happen with that. Anyway, all that to say, I like Melendez more than kind of at the 8th catching position where he's going.
Yep. But I think Contreras is like the 7th catcher. I think that's a nice little pocket of value. I like him in St. Louis hitting ahead of Goldschmidt and Arenado. And who knows where with Tommy Edman. Maybe Tommy Edman takes his place. But nevertheless, that's our list. Any other catchers you guys want to throw out there? We sort of gave him just a small amount of time, which is sad. But
nothing like
any love for Eric Haas? Anybody?
Nothing like ending on a high note.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Here's our worst position with nothing to say about
it. Well, is that
it.
better than starting on the catcher note? I don't know.
Well, it at least gives Nick a chance to come in with the little shepherd's crook and say, "Okay, guys, we've had enough of you.
Okay, come on.
Yep, get on.
Let's go. No, that was a ton of fun. Steve Boyfred and Hershey, thank you so much for being part of some. If you didn't notice, Gray, there is the breaking news underneath for Cole Irvin.
Beautiful, isn't it?
I sorry, I missed. Sorry.
What would we have done without having the breaking news? But
I didn't see the ticker. Sorry.
I'll be honest with you, Gray. What you said about O'Neal Cruz has me absolutely drafting O'Neal Cruz now.
Sprung?
Yeah.
I am telling you, man. O'Neal Cruz he's the truth, man. Top 10 overall next year for sure.
Yeah, it's one of those things where all of a sudden, you see the talent on the field and you're like, oh yeah, right, yeah, rookie year or whatever. But we all know that this is something that is going to be legitimate very quickly.
Yeah, I don't think we know the ceiling yet. It's going to be so good.
I know. I can't wait. I don't care what he had, like a 33% K rate last year, whatever.
I don't care. It doesn't matter.
I don't either.
I said, in September, he started making better contact. It's like all bets are off, bro. He's number one. He's going to take the Pirates to the promised land.
All that veteran leadership there with McCutcheon and Carlos Santana.
Can you name 4 of the Pirates starters this year, Gray?
No, they're not going to do pitching. They've decided against doing pitching this year. They're just doing the hitting stuff.
Oh God. This is all I focus on, and I don't know if I can tell you I can name 4 pitchers on the Pirates right now. It's not very good. But anyway, it's not what we're doing right now. Steve, Gray, and Brent, thank you guys so much for being a part of this. Fantastic panel, really. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good work,
Thank
Nick.
you.
Thanks
for